Hello, everyone. This is Sylvia from Mentimeter, and welcome to this Mentimeter Getting Started sessions for instructors all over the world. My colleague Neo has been encouraging all of you in the chat to join the Menti either by scanning the QR code or clicking on the link that he has provided and letting us know which institution you are joining us from. And I see that there's a bit of a competition between Madison College and PMI and Seneca now in terms of how many folks we have joining from those institutions. Please do join the Menti and submit your institution. This will get you comfortable with what we'll be doing for the rest of our hour together. A lot of the questions and a lot of the slides that we'll be experiencing today with Menti will be interactive. So the sooner you join the Menti, the quicker you'll be able to engage with the rest of the attendees through Menti. I will pause here for a bit more just because I see that there is a lot more coming in. But once again, scan the QR code at the bottom left or click on the link that Neil has posted in the chat itself and submit your institution in the Menti there. We'll be using Menti quite extensively today. So anytime you have questions, I will walk you through today on how to submit those to Menti directly. Because as you know, it is quite challenging to be focusing on one presentation and your slides and your delivery, and then having to moderate a chat on the side. To basically save me time and allow me to focus on the delivery today and converse with you in a smoother way, we'll be using Mentimeter for all of those. However, my wonderful colleague Neil will be in the chat in case you have any questions you'd like to put in there. I will wait for a few more seconds. In here, once again, just scan the QR code on the bottom left or click on the link that Neil keeps posting in the chat and use that platform. Use the phone or the tab that has been opened on your device to be able to engage with everyone else. I see that we have 93 people that have connected and 75 has answered. So I think most of you have connected with the Menti. If in any case you have not connected yet, now that I move to the next slide, don't be afraid. You can still use the manual instructions that are on top of the screen to join the Menti and be able to answer all of the questions I have for you today in the Menti itself, or you can once again click on the link that has been submitted. Wonderful. I'm so impressed with the diversity of institutions that we have represented today. Quite a lot from the States, but also see Seneca, that is a big representative here from Canada, or at least Toronto, where I'm personally located. We have University of Manitoba as well, Kentucky, American. We are spread out all over the North American. Looks like it. Wonderful. Thank you. I will now move on to the next slide we have for today, and I'll very briefly introduce myself. My name is Sylvia, and I am Senior Faculty Development and Student Engagement Specialist here at Menti, and I'm very passionate about teaching and learning and modernizing how we engage with our students and what kind of experiences we provided. On a personal note, I'm a big Formula One fan and I have 2 dogs. So if you have your own dogs as well, feel free to post that in the chat and we can create a little bit of a quick dog community going forward. I'm also posting my email address here in case you would like to reach out after this session and have a different conversation. Now we move on to a very quick housekeeping aspect for you all. If at any point of time you find yourself looking like this man, there are questions, something's not very clear, you would like me to clarify, or you would like me to go into a completely different area and answer a specific question that has been brewing in your mind for a while. What you need to do is, after you have scanned that QR code already, or you have logged in with the link or the voting instructions at the top, at the very bottom of your Menti page, you'll always find a button called Open Q&A. When you click on it, you'll be able to submit your question, and that question will be passed on to Neil for moderation, just to ensure we answer all of the most important questions today and filter out any duplicates. And once that question has been reviewed and approved, it will pop up on my screen here so I can answer it when convenient. Don't be afraid that you putting a question there will potentially disturb a delivery or anything like this, because it won't. Your question will appear in kind of a lobby for me, so I'll be able to stop and answer that question whenever convenient for me. So please utilize the Open Q&A button to put in your questions there they'll be anonymous, and at the same time give you the ability to hear the answer in a bit of a more public forum instead of having to chat in the live stream chat. At the same time, there are other buttons you can be using. There are the reactions. If you agree or disagree with a statement, feel free to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down or the heart emoji. And there's also one very, very optional feature for you called send a comment. You see that more or less on top of the open Q&A button. If you would like to let me know about your dogs, if you have a different opinion about something and you want me to see that, feel free to use that that send a comment button, because unfortunately I don't have visibility over the chat itself. So I'll be looking at your responses about your dogs after, but if you want me to see it right now, feel free to use that send a comment functionality to engage with me and give me a quick insight into what's on your mind. So once again, after you have scanned or joined with the link or the digit instructions over here, you always find the open Q&A button and the comments there as well. Now, let's do a very quick icebreaker, but also a bit of a check of how everyone is doing today. Someone has a very needy miniature golden doodle named Poppy. This is a pin on image. So this works slightly different than anything else we'll be doing today, and some of you might already know it, but for those that don't, there is a dot right in between of Nicholas focused on your voting device. So that's your phone or the tab that has been opened separately. Move that dot and place it to the Nicholas Cage feeling and emotion that represents you best today. I'll let you play around with it and see how it goes. We are at the very beginning or right before the beginning of the semester for many institutions. So in honesty, I am not surprised that we're seeing, unfortunately, a lot of people who are rather stressed, and one person that might be overstressed with the bees. This session in particular hopefully won't push you even further. It will hopefully give you a different sense of maybe not relaxation, but focus. Our goal today is to cover how you can use Mentimeter to engage with your students in a different way, collect more information from them, but also scale the way you communicate to your students. We have, at least I see, 143 people that have joined my Menti today. That can be a typical student group. Some of you are teaching those larger classes, and it's humanly impossible, unfortunately, to go through all of the students and be able to know what each of them are feeling, what kind of experiences they have, what questions they might be having. So with Menti today, I will do my best to dig deep into all of your needs and preferences in a bit of a more scalable, wider way. And if you like this particular slide, at the end of the session today, you'll be receiving, of course, the recording, but also the link to my deck. So you can use this particular slide as well with your students. Or if you don't necessarily like Nicolas Cage, feel free to just Google whatever you prefer, maybe dogs or cats or other animals, and find something similar. It is a fantastic way of doing a quick check and see how everyone's doing without necessarily asking for people to have to put in their particular feelings into writing. And for those of you that are teaching sessions that are more reliable on visual stimulation and visual understanding, you can of course use this pin on image question type for actual formative assessment, where there is a correct area, for example, of the particular image, and you would like your students to be able to identify that. It would work in the exact same way, minus potentially the laughs and giggles from Nicolas Cage's feelings and emotions. Wonderful. Now that we are still getting to know each other front, I have another question here for you. And this time, I have not given you any hints. It is up to you how you would like to reply. Use your own words, use your own expressions, use your own experiences to answer the question, how do you currently keep your students engaged? Whatever your best practices, whatever your favorite activities, whatever your favorite approaches, just put it in there. Together, we'll hopefully learn and experience not just Menti, but see what others have been doing besides that to engage with the students and create an environment that is more appealing and more memorable to the students. So far, we have stories, activities, collaboration, memes, all up for the memes, role play, polling, chunking lessons, short breaks, very important, gamification and ed tech tools, short questions, think, pair, share, Mentimeter, memes and GIFs, sharing my enthusiasm. I see a few people have been mentioning how it's important to basically project the energy you expect to get from the students. More storytelling, more chats, more videos, humor, using Menti. Someone has been using Menti and have been enjoying it. Thank you for sharing. Interest, activities, wonderful. Wow. Well, we can definitely spend the rest of the hour just going through these and maybe like asking people to voice over a little bit more about what makes those activities so impactful for them. But unfortunately, we don't have the time to do it. What I would like to do here, though, is use the power of artificial intelligence to group those responses to see what the commonalities between all of your answers are. And as usual, because we are relying on AI power, we wait for a few seconds for it to think, and this is what we get. Collaboration seems to be, collaboration and activities in general seems to be what all of you have mentioned in one way or another. So it seems like group projects or think, pair, share or peer-to-peer learning seem to be something that quite a lot of you are already comfortable with. We have visuals, the importance of visual representation and stimulation, humor. Many people rely on humor and joke and memes, and maybe something else in here. We can definitely dig into that later on. Questions, asking the right questions, doing different games, gamifying your assessments maybe. Polling is already in there, stories, and we keep getting more and more. Wonderful. Today, we'll be covering, to be fair, quite a lot of those in different ways. What I want you to remember by the end of the session is that Mentimeter doesn't appear in your life to change everything you've ever done. It is to complement the things that are already working and to help you improve on the fronts that are not necessarily performing as well. We'll be showing you a few examples today on how you can utilize Menti with peer-to-peer learning and how you can gamify your experiences and also what kind of different activities you can pose on Menti. But please feel free to use Menti going forward in combination with what has already been successful for you. Don't let go of the things that work. They can definitely be improved further on, but feel free to rely on them as strongly as before. Now, I have one last question for you. All of these questions that I'm asking, and obviously for me, to get to know what kind of experiences you have, pre-existing knowledge, your challenges, but at the same time for you to experience how Mentimeter functions if you haven't necessarily used it before yourself. Now we're doing a bit of a self-assessment here, and I would like you to rate your confidence and comfort and knowledge, maybe to some extent, into these 5 different areas. We have using polling and engagement tools in general. We know that Mentimeter is part of that category. Maybe you don't have experience with Menti, but you have experience with others. How are you on the front on running formative assessment exercises, doing those check-in questions, getting that information while you are still teaching and before your students get to showcase their retention of information and their abilities in the summative assessment, how you are with working with active learning and critical thinking, and where are you on working with student feedback. That obviously is a very broad topic. It goes all the way to student evals at the end of the semester, at the end of the year, and it goes to what you're doing on a day-to-day basis with your students. All of this is anonymous, so don't be afraid of being very clear and very honest with yourself in this assessment. None of the answers here will come after you to bite you or anything like this. We're doing this as a way of understanding where we are today and what do we want to do and what do we want to improve on tomorrow. Alrighty, we seem to be least confident with Menti, and that makes sense. You're here today for a reason. You are here today to understand how Mentimeter functions better, to learn a bit more about it, to get maybe inspiration from other instructors, and hopefully implement that later on. We'll be talking about formative assessment, as I mentioned. So those of you that feel very comfortable, feel free to utilize the chat functionality on the send a comment button on your Menti to share if you have been doing different types of activities that have been quite successful for you, if you have cracked the code on formative assessment, or you have some tips and tricks for others as well. I will be showing you a few examples to get you started on the active learning and critical thinking, but what I want you to remember is that you can very easily implement active learning exercises with Mentimeter. The only thing you need to do better potentially is how you're asking those questions. We don't have quite a lot of time dedicated today on the importance of how the questions are asked and when they're asked and what we do with the information, but active learning can easily be achieved in some cases with just the right questions. And Menti can hopefully get you there and help you achieve that. On the topic of student feedback, we won't be going through an extensive walkthrough of how to do that. However, at the end of each example that we'll be seeing today, I want you to reflect individually. Maybe you can reach out to a peer later on. Maybe you can do it in the chat with me and the group. But all of these questions today that you'll be seeing and all of the examples that we'll be going through, an example of student feedback. Student feedback doesn't have to be you reaching out and asking for feedback directly. It doesn't have to be official. It doesn't have to be top-down driven. Feedback can be found in a formative assessment performance. Feedback can be found in a slide like this. This is a feedback to me that we have a way to go in all of these areas and that I should be investing more time going forward when we're doing those sessions in helping you all move a little bit to the right as we progress. So all of this will be covered today in one shape or form. And if you have any questions or if you have any reflections, feel free to share that in the different chat functionalities. Now, why Menti? Very quickly, in case you're brand new to it and you may fit more information on it, this is what we are trying to battle. The crickets in the room, the quiet engagement or the lack of it, the loudest voices in the room controlling the conversations. We all have seen and have met students that are very, very strong in their opinions and can really derail conversation into a completely different area. So we want to remove this. We want to put everyone on the exact same arena and allow everyone to have an equal voice into what's important to them, what kind of information they need, what questions they have. And how we achieve this is by giving you this tool. It is anonymous by default, which means that students in particular feel much more comfortable making mistakes. They feel more comfortable being honest with you and letting you know if they're challenging, if they have challenges with a particular concept, or maybe they have misunderstandings, or they need more of you or their peers. And it's also very reflective space. Depending on the questions, of course, you ask, you can easily run quite a lot of reflection exercises that help you and your students understand where they actually are without having to go through an official exam process or any other official paper that leads to a grade for them to understand where they are. We have the polling, of course. You already experienced a few polling questions. There's the Q&A that I see 3 of you have submitted questions, and I'll get to those very soon. And we'll also have the interactive content. Everything you see today has been built on Mentimeter, including this slide that just has text. Those of you that are very comfortable and have quite a lot of information already in PowerPoint, there's easy ways of uploading PowerPoint to Menti, or maybe putting Menti into PowerPoint with our PowerPoint plugin, so you don't have to recreate all of your content from scratch. But in those situations where you are creating something brand new, you can usually use Menti for that as well. And Menti is designed in such a way that it helps people like me who are really bad at creating beautiful looking presentations on PowerPoint. It is designed to remove that anxiety and actually put you in a position where you focus on the most important content and it looks beautiful by default. And last but not least, Mentimeter is available for any type of modality: synchronous, asynchronous, hybrid, online, in person. It doesn't really matter. It works in the exact same way. So you don't have to be afraid that this only is applicable if you are using it with 20 students in class and in person. No, it can be 2,000 students in person, or it can be 15 asynchronously. It doesn't really matter. And here are some examples of where Mentimeter can be used and in what scenarios you can use Menti for. The formative assessment and retrieval practice is something we'll cover today with a few examples, but it can easily be used for case studies, scenario-based questions. You can use it a lot for fun. It doesn't have to be all official. It doesn't have to be all about assessment of knowledge or learning. It can be about getting to know your students. What kind of experiences they're bringing into this new semester? What are their aspirations? You can ask them silly questions. You can have quiz competitions, as you'll see today, on fun topics. It can be fun. It doesn't just have to be official. and you can combine those as well. And all of the other areas that we have explored before as well, from reflection to active learning, all the way to group work. When you ask all of your students to do their peer-to-peer learning or think, pair, share exercises, you can use Menti in the background for them to submit all of those answers or all of those reflections they have shared with each other. So that learning and that conversation doesn't necessarily remain between these two people that have potentially talked about it. It can be visible to the rest of the group and to you as well. So you know every group that has discussed a specific topic, what have they discussed? What are their takeaways? What are their learnings? And many others. Now, we will go into where and how should I use Menti, and we'll cover 3 topics or 3 areas today that I think will get you started in the best possible way. We'll be talking about retrieval practice, we'll be talking about formative assessment, and having fun. And before I go there, I'll pause and answer a few of the questions that have popped up here, just in case those questions are related to things we have already covered. I prefer to do that to avoid any misunderstandings going forward. Can you show us how to use it? I believe someone said in asynchronous. Yes, I'll show you that. Let me just see the questions here. Can you discuss possibilities for asynchronous engagement? Absolutely. And I will show you how easy that is. And everything we cover today, obviously we will experience it in a synchronous format, but don't be restrained from it. Everything we see today as an example, you can easily switch it to an asynchronous engagement. Because in Menti, how it works is that it's a click of a button and all of a sudden what you're doing is kind of like a survey. It's self-paced experience. So the questions we see today can easily be asked in person to your students or online, for example, over a period of time. And when we go to the platform itself, I'll show you how to do that. Is this interactive element available to everyone? This is a hard to answer question just because I don't necessarily know which institution you personally are coming from today. Just looking at the initial lobby questions, there are some institutions here that have an existing agreement with Menti that give them full access to all instructors. You need to check internally with your institution to see if there is a Mentimeter agreement available that you can join. Otherwise, we have the free version of Menti that gives you most of the features you need. There is just a limitation of 50 participants per month. So it might not be the best for people with big student groups, but it can be quite useful for those with smaller classes. Can you use any image in a Menti? Yes. What I've been using so far are images from our integrations with Unsplash and Giphy. So those are free to use. I just search for a keyword and add the image that speaks to me the most. But at the same time, you can, of course, add your own image. There is the ability to do that as well. And I'll put a note down for myself to show you how to do that in a bit. Now, I will put a bit of a pause here on the questions and move on, but feel free to submit those as they come to your mind. Retrieval practice. Why I'm mentioning this is the first important topic of our session today is that I will quote it here: continuously and actively recalling information strengthens memory and learning more than passively reviewing the information. In order for our students to develop the deep knowledge and the deep understanding of the information and be able to go up Bloom's taxonomy basically and analyze the information, create information, they need to be able to recall it. And we are not capable of knowing if students retain information or not if we don't ask it. So pausing more often prompts students to retrieve key concepts. And with Menti, you can do that very, very easily. I will show you a few questions in the next slide that you can ask your students, especially now at the beginning of a new semester. If you're meeting them again for the second year in a row, you can check what they remember from last year. Or if you're meeting a brand new group of students, you can check what they remember from before, whatever they're coming from. What kind of experiences do they bring to class? What kind of knowledge? What kind of best practices? It's very easy to ask, and it's super simple and a fantastic tool for you to know what kind of a group of students do I have today, how much information do they retain, and how can I continue pushing that retention. I also encourage you to align class activities with assessment. So it's really easy, basically copy pasting what you expect your students to be able to do when they get to the summative point and replicating that throughout the year by simply just asking one of the questions maybe that you have in your exams in Menti during the year and see if your students are able to perform the way you expect them to perform. Here are some examples of questions you can ask when you meet your students this week, next week, depending on when the semester starts for you. What is your main takeaway from last class? This is a very simple question you can ask every single time you meet with your students. List 3 to 5 things you learned from last class, a bit deeper, but also gives you the nuances of knowledge and information that they have retained. And you can also spot what is not being mentioned. Something not being mentioned by anyone means that maybe you need to revisit that if it's important for them to remember. One of my favorite, what connections can you make between last week's material and today's topic? That's a very, very simple question you can ask every time you meet your students and see if they are able to connect. And what's a real world example of the topic we discussed last time? This is a very simple exercise you can implement even if you've never used Mentimeter before. Just ask one question at the beginning of class and see what you get. And I see that a lot of you have already read my slide if you have run similar activities in the past. And I see that there are 19 people who have said yes. And just seeing that gives you an indication that it works, it helps. And I encourage you to, of course, experiment with different questions. Don't be afraid of the answers. Don't be afraid if you get answers that are not necessarily exactly what you were hoping for. You see that your students are not really remembering what you were hoping them to remember. You are asking at the right time, not waiting for them to show you that gap of knowledge at the summative assessment will help you address that as early on. And then over time, with every class or every session that you do with them, you'll be able to get them to the point of them retaining the information that you hope they retain. And here is a very brief example of an instructor and a question they particularly use in every class, that it's at the end of it. What was one thing you learned today? Retrieval practice can and should be technically expanded because there's recency bias. We remember what we just heard. Maybe we don't remember it a week from now. But you can also do this as well. If you like, you can finish every class you have with a question like that. It helps you once again understand what are the gaps, but also what is the stickiest of the information. So you know that maybe these are areas that your students feel more comfortable with, so you can focus on something else that has been missing. Now, I see that more questions are coming up, and I personally prefer not to go through all of my slides, but answer as many questions as possible than just going with my own flow. So pause once again to answer a few of the questions that have appeared. Question. After uploading a PowerPoint presentation, is it possible to embed a video into the presentation? Yes, I'll put this down when we go into the platform. Mentimeter has a video slide, and you can embed a YouTube video and Vimeo, I believe. So as long as your video lives on the internet, you'll be able to easily embed that. And then it works like any other slide. You'll just have to click play and the video will play. How would you use Menti in an online class? Very good. I will show you that's a bit of a combination with using Mentimeter asynchronously. When you have an online class, you don't necessarily potentially meet with your students as often as those that are running synchronous sessions on campus. So in an online conversation, I would encourage you to utilize a lot of the asynchronous self-paced activities you can do on Menti to collect all of the information you need from your students before maybe meeting them for a bit over maybe Zoom. And when you get to Zoom, you're still using Menti similarly to the way we're doing today. It doesn't matter if they're physically next to you or if they're separated by a screen. Can you embed Menti into Canva or Microsoft PowerPoint? Not directly into Canva. So those of you that are using Canva, you will need to download whatever you have created on Canva as a PDF or a PowerPoint, and then upload that into Menti. And I will show you in just a few moments how to import that. The importing functionality is fantastic because every Canva slide that you have will now be on Mentimeter's end. So your students will be able to react with the reactions you have been using. You'll be able to have a Q&A as well. So even your Canva or your PowerPoint slides will become interactive as well. So they're no longer static, one-directional kind of conversational pieces. Question. Last question. Will it work with Genuinely, I unfortunately am not familiar with this particular tool, so I'll put this down for me to get to know it a bit better. But if you want me to answer in a bit of a more detail, please submit another question that explains a little bit more what Genuinely does, and I'll do my best to answer from an assumption and overall perspective. Alrighty. Let's go to formative assessment now. The previous questions that we had, they're still type of an assessment for you. They show you the learning gaps, they show you the opportunities, and they show you what sticks. However, I will want to show you a few questions that are a bit more specific, and those might be directly aligned to the summative assessment exercises that I mentioned. You can basically copy paste what you have in the exams into a formative assessment exercise and try to see if your students are ready to perform. Now, before I do all of that, I'll just ask you to quickly assess. How often do you personally run formative assessment exercises in your classes? And we have never to all the way in every or almost every class. We're getting a very interesting, beautiful mountain view here with a spread from all the way to the left, all the way to the right. And for those of you that have voted already, you see that the average, which is 3.1 now, moves depending on how many people have voted and what kind of answers they have personally given. But I will just hover my mouse over here just to see the spread. So we have so far 15 people that are very, very confident or like they use it more or less every time, and 12 people that have never used it. So the next slides I'll show you, I ask those of you that feel very comfortable with formative assessment to just brace yourselves for a bit of a longer, I would say, delivery of why that is important. So we can help all of the folks that are not necessarily using formative assessments as much get to the point of using them like the way you do. Why we're putting so much emphasis in formative assessment today is that it's kind of like a superpower for many instructors. You can really spot a lot, and it doesn't necessarily take much time to prepare a formative assessment exercise on Mentimeter's end. Because once again, you can copy paste questions that maybe you have in your exam, or you can recreate a variation of it if you feel comfortable with generative AI. AI can help you design questions that are aligned with the learning outcomes and the learning objectives of the particular class and see if your students are able to answer correctly. Here is an example from an instructor. And why I'm showing you this particular example is that it's very easy for us to ask theoretical questions when we're doing formative assessment exercise. Once again, copy paste from already an example or from other activities that have been done before. If you want to do something completely different than before, what I would recommend doing is if you can apply a theoretical question into some form of a practical example, especially if it comes from this mainstream area of movies and TV shows and music or sports, it can really help your students connect the theoretical knowledge to the actual practical use of it. And here we have an instructor teaching in a business course using a Marvel Universe question to see if the students are comfortable with ROI as a concept and when is that being applied. And as you can see, it's a simple multiple choice question with 1 correct answers and 2 incorrect. And that instructor is very easily able to identify that there's quite a lot to be done here in terms of comfortability with the students' understanding of ROI. Even though we have 7 students who have answered it correctly, the majority of the student group is still struggling. So what the instructor here can do is pause, reevaluate, maybe explain it in a slightly different way, or share more information that the students can access asynchronously, and ask a similar question the next time they meet to see if the majority of the students are now actually moving into the correct area. As another example, we have a simple select all true statements. We're all very comfortable with true and false. We're all very comfortable with true and false statements. That is probably a best practice in many exams. Probably the majority of you have had some form of a question phrase like that in your summative assessment. Feel free to use Menti to do that as well. You can select, as you can see, 2 or 3 out of the 4 are correct, or just maybe one. This is another way to pose questions that help your students reflect and assess the information in a bit of a deeper way. Is another example. Sometimes you don't have to ask a multiple choice question for it to be a formative assessment. It's actually easier for students to maybe guess. We have here an example. If you answered you're still having trouble on whatever the previous question was, what are some challenges? This is a formative assessment of its own. When you have answered, maybe you have this particular question and you see that a lot of the students are selecting the incorrect answers, you can have an open-ended after that to ask your students why. What were the challenges? What are you struggling with? Why did you select X over Z? And that can give you quite honest insight into what is really being retained without necessarily putting your students on the spot and giving them additional sense of anxiety, maybe associated with admitting that they're wrong or they're struggling in front of you and their peers as well. And this is a last example here, once again, an open-ended form, similarly to the previous slide. We have a different perspective here. Instead of keeping things purely theoretical, expand your question so your students can reflect from their personal experiences. Here we have, consider the context of a family dinner with extended family. Are there unspoken rules and behaviors? What are they? This is an example from an instructor that is teaching in a community college in the States, and she's walking her students through the different spoken rules, behaviors in socially heavy environments that is prepping those students for their courses in humanities, actually. So feel free to use Mentimeter to ask questions that are not directed to questions they might face during the exams or something very theoretical. Feel free to make them more human. It's very easy to do that as long as you have an idea in mind. Now, we talked a lot about formative assessment, and we're not spending too much time on it because it's a replication of the overall idea of just test your students' knowledge while they're learning it and don't wait until the very end. But I would like to break it a little bit here and move to a completely different topic now. Do you use icebreakers in your sessions? Okay. So the next slides won't be new, potentially, but only at the beginning. That is perfectly fine. Using an icebreaker only at the beginning, it's still an icebreaker used. The next slides I'll show you are examples of how you can use Mentimeter to create a bit more fun. Or even if you don't consider any of the things I show you fun, they're still allowing you to get to know your students on a personal, more human level, and not necessarily just use the platform once again to assess knowledge or collect feedback. If you had to be on a reality TV show, what show would you be on? Icebreaker, it has nothing to do with potentially unless you may be in movies and film. Most probably it has nothing to do with the topics that were being discussed and maybe the subject that they're going through or the exams. It is just human, it is just fun. You can use Mentimeter to see where students answer these topics, and you will see the room's vibe will change as well. People will turn to each other. Oh, what did you select? Maybe the people that have selected. We have Survivor, I think twice here. Yes, the two people that want to be in Survivor can connect. It is anonymous, but because it's low stake engagement, it is personal and it's for good fun things. Students won't be afraid of admitting that they have selected MasterChef, for example. So as you go, someone else has MasterChef as well. They'll be able to see who in that room has said that and connect with each other. And especially in larger classes, you will help them build a sense of community and sense of engagement and belonging that didn't necessarily potentially exist there before. Another example, especially now at the beginning of the new semester, feel free to use Mentimeter to introduce yourself in a slightly different way. 2 truths and a lie about me. Which one is the truth? Which two are the truth and which one is the lie? You can have 3 statements like this. You can flip it completely off. I like doing all of these 5 things. Which one do you want me to talk more about? And you have hiking, for example, and you have your MasterChef abilities or whatever it is. It's fun and it allows your students to kind of like lead the way, or have a good guesswork in this particular case and see if they'll be able to read you more or less and see if they can understand which one is the lie. And then you can have a joke about it as well. And someone else might be a Formula One fan in the room. So you have a few students that will connect with you in a slightly different way than maybe the rest as well. Now, I will answer a few more questions and then we have 20 minutes left. So I will go into the platform and I have put down that I'll show you the survey. So the people that asked about the asynchronous use of Menti, I have not forgotten you. I'll show you that, as well as how to get images, the video, and how to import, as well as other few important, I would say, features that will help you adopt Mentimeter better. Let's see. And we use Mentimeter for graded in-class activities. A bit of a challenging question to answer because by default, Mentimeter is anonymous. So if you use Menti as it is, technically you cannot use it for graded in-class activities because you're unable to say who has answered what to assign the points related to their performance. However, Mentimeter has different features available on the different plans. So it really depends on what kind of plan your institution is on or if you're using the free version. But we do have something called identified participants or verified participants. So students verify the identity with single sign-on, and then you'll be able to say who has answered what and assign the related points. Or with identified participants, this is something that can be used as kind of like a manual way of collecting attendance. You just ask the students to submit their names or their email addresses, and they'll be able to provide that information to you so you can gather that. I'll ask my wonderful colleague Neil here if he can share the help article for identified participants, because verified participants with a single sign-on is available on a larger scale, and not most of you here, I would assume, are on that. So the identified participants is something that you might already have access to, and this is your way of doing graded in-class activities. Note that there is currently no direct connection between what you do on Mentimeter to your learning management system. So if you are to use Menti for graded activities, you do it on Menti, you'll collect the information, you know what each student has answered, and you'll be able to assign the points, but you'll have to assign those manually through an upload to your NMS. However, we are working on what we call an LTI integration, and that will come by the end of this year, the beginning of next year. So more to come. There will be more scalable use of doing this going forward. But until then, you do it on Menti and then you just have to upload it to the gradebook. Can I use Menti to conduct a student survey that opens on a specific date and then closes 2 weeks later? Yes, absolutely. And I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. What is the best way to incorporate Menti in a Google presentation? Very good question. I would recommend downloading your Google presentation as a PDF and then importing into Menti, and I'll show you how that is done. There is also a Google Slide integration that basically embeds the Google Slides into Menti. And I'll ask Neil once again, this time to share the help article about the Google Slides embedding integration that you can check out later on. But until then, I'll show you how to import it through the Menti. I'll just pause in here and now go into Menti itself. Yeah, for the sake of, let me see if I can, need to switch what I'm sharing with you all so you can see the correct. Here we go. I will start from scratch in terms of how things are created. I'll go to home, I'll log in, either with my institutional credentials if I have access to that, or I'll create a free account, and then I'll get over here. What I will do first is click on New Menti. And then I'm prompted to select, do I want to start from scratch? Do I want to use a template? Do I want to import slides? I will show you the import slides in a second, so ignore that for now. Use a template if you're struggling, if you have an idea in mind and you just want to see what could be done potentially for those areas. You can see the different templates that are available here. There's more categories. Maybe you want to do a student check-in. You'll see what kind of questions you could potentially ask. Feel free to explore that functionality. But for the time being, I'll go back and start from scratch. When I start from here, I'm prompted to select what kind of a question do I want to select. Do I want it to be one of the interactive polling questions, like a multiple choice or the open-ended that we saw, or the word cloud at the very beginning? Do I want to do a quiz competition? This is a gamified version of a formative assessment. So there's correct answers, there is a leaderboard, there is a winner at the end. It's more fun, but also more intense. You have to do it on the spot. Or do I want to create content slides? For the sake of this, I'll start with a text slide just to show you how things are done. I'm prompted with this blank page. Just write your text here. I'll just say hello. How this works, the text slide in particular, is how a PowerPoint blank slide basically works. I will need to select and figure out how big I want it to be. Maybe I want to change the color. Maybe I want to make it bold. Very simple, very easy markdown related activities that you are probably very, very comfortable with on PowerPoint. Now, I've said my hellos. This is the beginning of my presentation. What I will need to do next is select a new slide. And then the same thing pops up again. This time, I would like to start with a multiple choice question. And then this appears. In a similar fashion, I'm using this space here to ask the question. And my question is, who run the world? That is one of my favorite icebreakers, actually, to ask. Obviously, the answer is girls. As we know, Beyonce has said it, but I would like to create a little bit of a competition between the dog and the cat people. So now what I need to do now is select my options. So just click on this page here, or the canvas area where the options are. And after I have clicked on it, I get these options here on the side. So the one thing that doesn't happen in terms of editing directly on the slide here is when we have options. Those appear here on the right. And I'll put dogs, and option 2, cats. And I don't need option 3, so I can delete that. My question is done. If I don't want to add images, if I don't want to change anything in terms of visualization, I am done. It literally takes me the amount of time it will take me to write down the question and the potential answers, and then I'll be ready to go. However, I have the abilities. Maybe I don't like bar charts. Maybe I want like pies and donuts or dots, etc. Or on a bar chart, I would like to add GIFs or images on top of my options. So I have the dogs here. And as you see under next to each statement, we have these buttons over here. So I can click on this button. I can upload a picture of one of my dogs or both of them. I can go to image library, which is HD free to use images. So those are static images, and search for dog here. Or I can do the same with GIFs. So these, once again, feel free to use those at any point of time. You don't have to worry about any copyright whatsoever, and just use whatever brings you joy from here. So I will select this little smiley guy, and then I can do the same thing while this is uploading. I can do it for the cats as well. These are extremely optional things you can do. You don't have to do that if you don't want to, but if you want to create a bit more visually stimulating slides and you just like the GIFs, and someone was mentioning that they use a lot of memes, for example, in their teaching, this is another way of just spicing it up, for lack of better words, and turning a simple multiple choice question into something a bit more visually stimulating. And at the same time, I can also use the image over here if I want to upload like bigger images that sit on the side of the slide or as a background, and the same module that we experienced before appears. So I can search for dog and cat here. Oh, cuties. And I can select that. And now it will be extremely visually stimulating, but for the point of the demo, after I have uploaded that image, I'll be able to select where I want that image to be and how big I want it to be. Maybe I can just put it as a background. So plenty of things to do in terms of working with images. Now, let's say that this was the Menti question that I wanted to ask. Now, I would like to add my PowerPoint slides that I have already created and I have been using over the last 2 years quite successfully. What I need to do is click on your slide. And at the very bottom here, I know it potentially doesn't look like a button, but it is a button. There's this import slides at the very bottom. If I click on it, I will be able to select my PowerPoint or PDF or Keynote, actually, document from my computer. And once I have selected that, all of the slides that I have on PowerPoint will become slide by slide on Mentimeter's end. The only thing I want you to think about when you're uploading PowerPoints from here is that if you have animations that you're relying on for pedagogical reasons, those won't be transferred over, because how the slides will be basically transferred over is kind of like static images, like screenshots. So if you don't have animations, feel free to upload your PowerPoint from here. And then what would happen is that on every slide that you have on PowerPoint, you have 5 slides PowerPoint, now you have 5 slides in here as well. What you'll be able to do is add those proactive student engagement pieces like the Q&A and the reactions. And how that is done is that whatever slides you have, PowerPoint or not, you have this interactivity box over here. If you click on it, you will always find this enable Q&A button here. I highly encourage you, whatever Menti slides you have, to activate this on. What this will do is allow whoever has joined my Menti to be able to ask me a question at any point of time or on any slide. However, you saw on my presentation, those questions don't disturb my flow. They appear over here at the bottom. So I know that I currently have 9 questions, but I can stop and answer those when needed. So you don't have to be afraid that questions popping up would mean you're having to stop and answer those straight away. No, you can leave the answers to the very end of class or divide it between the different topics that you're covering. But I highly encourage you to do that. If you don't want to do that, if you feel very strongly about questions happen at a specific point of time only, there is a separate slide called Q&A. So if you've only used this, only by the time you get to this particular slide in your Menti, only then your students will be able to ask you questions. Now, I'm looking through my notes of what I've promised to show people. Videos. Click on your slide, scroll a little bit down to the content slide. There is a video slide here. If I click on it, what I need to do is paste the URL in here and click add, and that will embed basically the video in here. And as any embedded video in any other platform out there, just click on the play button. Make sure your sound is on so people can hear what's coming out, and the video will play. And survey. All right. So let's say that I'll just delete this. Let's say that this very small question, Mentimeter questions that I've created, is what I want to share with my students in a self-paced form. I'd like to welcome them maybe to the new semester. I have maybe a slide here with learning objectives, for example. I want them to go through a bit of a content. And then I would like to ask who runs the world. Maybe I just want to do a quick fun activity between dogs and cats when we meet in class. And I would like for them to submit any questions they might have about my class or this new semester or our journey together. And I'd like to send them, give them that to answer in the next 2 weeks. What I need to do, build my questions here, put my slides, PowerPoint slides, no PowerPoint slides, whatever needed, and then navigate to the settings here on the top. And then the only thing I need to do is, instead of a presentation, I click on survey. This automatically transforms my Menti into a self-paced experience. And then I just need to send them the link to vote. How that is done after I have put it on a survey mode is I go to share here on the bottom right. Oh, need to give it a name. Share here on the bottom right, and I need to give them this participation link. So for those of you that wanted to use Mentimeter asynchronously, just build your slides, go to settings, click on survey, and then go to the participation here to send them this link. When you're ready to close it off, maybe you have given them a deadline of 2 weeks. In 2 weeks from now, you can disable the participation on this particular survey, and whoever's voted has voted. Neil, my friend, if you can post the link to the help article about survey mode in the chat, the folks that are interested in learning more and maybe need a reminder of how to do that can refer to it later on. Nice. The last thing, when you have built it, I'll just go back on a presentation mode here. How you present to your students when you're ready to do that. When you have built your slides, there is a present button here on the top. Click on the present button. That will automatically give you this full screen view. You're either sharing your screen on Zoom or Microsoft Teams, similarly to what I'm doing today, or you're putting this in the projector. It is Mentimeter's browser based, so you don't have to download anything or worry about anything. Just share your screen one way or another. And then you need to get them to connect. There will always be instructions in the top. So if you don't remember how to put the QR code that I will show you now, you always can rely on this. Just get your students to open up whatever device they're using, go to the browser, put menti.com and use this code. Or you can use this toolbar that appears at the bottom of the screen. And there is this QR code looking like icon in here. You can pop that out. And you can even place it into different positions if you want to. There are keyboard shortcuts available over here that you can explore for those of you that want to navigate that. But to begin with, there is a button here that you can click at any point of time to give a QR code instead. Now, I actually have a very small screen here, and once in a while I try to look what's happening in the chat, and someone was like, "I want to answer who run the world," but no, I won't be launching that. But a good idea for the future. Now, I will go back and do a very quick quiz experience with you because I want you to see the quiz competition, and then I'll answer the last few questions. Now, the quiz is slightly different than anything else we've done before. There will be time associated with your answers, and on one of the questions, the faster you answer, the more points you'll be getting. So put your thinking hats on and focus on, and let's see how it goes. We'll go into a lobby now. You'll be given a random image and a nickname, keeping it anonymous, but you can put in your name as well if you want to. You don't have to do that. If you want to rename anonymous, just click on join quiz and you'll be good to go. Alrighty, I'll press enter. So keep an eye on that voting device of yours. It doesn't matter how fast you answer. It only matters if you answer correctly on this particular question. According to neuroscience, how long is the average attention span? 1 to 10, 11 to 20, 21 to 40, 41 to 60 minutes. And here we can spend probably a day or two going through all of the research papers down on this topic and seeing how different they are from one to another. But there is an overall more broader consensus that the average attention span of an adult is somewhere between 11 and 20 minutes, more around the 15 mark. I do see it decreasing, unfortunately, quite drastically. So it's probably going down. Technically, 44 of you will probably be correct very, very soon. But until then, we're using this as a guiding light. Why I'm asking this question? If you're running a session for, or you're speaking for more than 20 minutes without any interaction, whatever that interaction is, the brains naturally shut off. And it's not about you. You might be the most phenomenal, fantastic facilitator. It's just the brain can't handle information for more than 20 minutes in an impactful way. So if you need a guide of when to use Menti questions, feel free to put it in between every 10 to 15 minutes. Keep in mind that you can retain everyone's focus. There will be people who lose attention after 20 seconds, but those that are actually focused on information, and if it's designed in such a way, putting Mentimeter questions in between 15 minutes or so can help you quite a lot. Otherwise, of course, put the questions where they matter the most if you're not concerned about this in particular. Someone currently report 8 seconds the attention of goldfish, or actually I watched Finding Dory yesterday on a plane getting back home. So probably yes, you can you can hope for the best, but it is not getting any better for us, is it? Now I have one more question for you. Which of these is the best practice? Kick off with an icebreaker. Use Menti with classroom assessment techniques. Allow for anonymous Q&A and feedback. All right. This wasn't necessarily a very impactful question in terms of finding the wrong answer, but it is my way of kind of like summarizing everything we've covered today. Don't be afraid of icebreakers. Kicking off with one is fantastic, but feel free to have an icebreaker in between questions or topics. Whatever classroom assessment techniques you're using, the muddiest points, think per share, anything else, you can replicate that on Menti when you have the need for it and you see that it can be impactful. And the Q&A is fantastic. Sometimes you prep and you present yourself and you have this fantastic idea in mind, but students have a completely different experience than what you were expecting. The Q&A can really help you find that out without having to prepare for any weird situation that you weren't necessarily expecting to happen. I see that we're on top of the hour. I will stay for a few more minutes just to answer the questions that have been submitted here. So those of you that need to leave can go and do so. And when you get the recording later on, you can scroll all the way to the end of the session to see the answers to those. And let's see who won before I answer the question. I'll jump the gun very, very quickly. All righty, Puffy, congratulations. Funnily enough, it's the image of a fish. So here we have Dory with the 8 seconds attention span, but Puffy actually had much more because answered all questions correctly and wins this very short Mentimeter quiz. Congrats. I will stay here, start small for your next Mentimeter adventure, whatever that is. If you have used it before, if you haven't used it, you don't have to do all of these things that we covered today at once. You will get there one day, I'm sure. However, start small. It can be one icebreaker tomorrow, one formative assessment, or whatever. Just start somewhere. Just baby steps like this person, one step at a time. I will end here. I'll actually hide the thing so people don't get overwhelmed by this. But if you have feedback for this session, if you have learned something that you'd like to share with us, if you have an idea of what we should be covering in another session, please put this in here. I genuinely spend a lot of time going through those. So I appreciate any feedback, any guidance, or anything that you are willing to share. And now I thank you all once again. I'll stay to answer the questions in here for the recording. But I appreciate everyone's time. I hope we see each other again in one shape or another. And you had my contact information at the very beginning if you'd like to connect in different ways. Question time. Can you raise inappropriate free responses in case a student is being inappropriate? Yes, you can. Unfortunately, this happens rarely, but it does. We can't control what kind of experiences students bring into the classroom. What you can do is, if I will hide responses here, if you can, if something has happened, what you can do, use your mouse to come over here and turn the responses off. So this will cut off any ability to submit anything to Menti. And when you do that, when you hover your mouse over a specific answer, you'll be able to remove that answer. Another way to do it is just stop sharing completely and spend a bit more time, unfortunately, verbally walking people through why they need to be kind of like acting and behaving in a specific way and why academia is not the place for them to be exhibiting particular behaviors. Neil, my friend, another request for you online, if you can share the help article for profanity filter that we have. That is a filter you can trigger on that basically will remove any bad words that someone submitted. In the free version of Me to 50 people per month means you can use unlimited time in that month as long as it's under 50 people in total. So if I have 2 classes to do this month and both classes are with 20 people, that is perfectly fine. But if I have 2 classes and both of them are with 50 people, that's 100 in total. So I'll only be able to use it once. What are the accessibility features of Menti? Beautiful. Neil, my friend, if you can share Mentimeter's accessibility page in the chat, that will be great. We do have, while we're still in here for the Q&A, under the settings over here, there is the ability to go to accessibility over here and see how every, I have not done my job here. You'll be able to see how your whole Menti is created and when there are issues that you need to address. But if you're not looking at that in particular, the menti.com portion where students are voting is fully accessible by screen readers. So students with visual disabilities will be able to participate on your Mentis as anyone else would. And that is quite beneficial. How can we best use Menti for workshops? Everything you saw today can easily be replicated there. Something that we didn't show today is when you have the open-ended question, you can have the ability to vote on answers. So let's say everyone submit your best idea on how to approach this particular project that we have in mind. People submit the answers, and then all of these answers become available for voting. So the whole group can choose which particular idea they like the most without you having to replicate that experience in a different form. If you enable the feature where students have to log in with their name, does their name show up publicly on every interactive screen? It can. There is the ability to do that. So if you go back to the identified participants help article that Neil has shared in the chat, you'll be able to see that it's up to you to decide if you want the names to be visible on all of their answers on the screen for everyone to see, or if you're the only person that should have access to that after a session has been done in your analytical data. What is the best way to share the slides in Menti after a presentation? If we want students to have a copy they can access as a follow-up. Wonderful question. There is a quick and simple way to do that. Option 1, click on share. And just scroll all the way to the bottom and you have this access level. So just copy this link. This will give them the link to your Menti. They will see all of the different graphs presenting the way they would in a live moment. They'll see what everyone else has said. Or if you don't like that the link basically needs to have access to the internet, what you can do instead is go to the results here at the top and then scroll the way to here, download button. If you click on that, you'll be able to download all of the things you've done, all of the slides with all of the respective answers into a PDF and share that instead. Those of you that are a bit more heavily working with learning management systems, if I go back to the share, there is the ability to embed slides as well. So you can actually embed something you've done in class or as a survey into the LMS shell of a particular course. Alrighty, one more question and we will be on our way. At conferences, sometimes there are issues running a presentation that has embedded videos. In Menti, are videos embedded directly into the Menti platform or remain linked to the original platform? They are embedded into Menti, however, they're being played and triggered from YouTube in particular. So if there is an issue running YouTube or opening up YouTube, or if there are challenges with the internet, you might face those issues. When videos are embedded into Menti, Menti is just kind of like the stage for it, but they're, yes, technically linked to the original platform, YouTube in that particular case. Alrighty. Thank you everyone so much once again. Apologies for running over, but this recording is for those of you that needed their questions answered in the Q&A. I hope to see everyone soon in one shape or another. Take care. Good luck with this new semester. And yeah, see you soon. Bye-bye.